It was the memory of my sandals hitting the stone road that kept me up that night. Not the stomach full of rich foreign foods or the stomach full of rich foreign foods or the jet lag, but the incessant flip-flop noise of each past step sounding and crashing into unknown territory. Thanks to that loud image replaying over and over in my mind, I lied awake. It seemed like an easy shoe to travel with, those silver flip-flops. Easy to take off for the security check and comfortable enough to endure a crammed, uncomfortable seat from a questionable European airline. Matched with my sweatpants, a sweatshirt, and a messy ponytail, I couldn't imagine arriving in Athens any other way. However, next to my sister, my relaxed attire was quite a jarring contrast. Hair that was sculpted with beautiful curls, face beautifully enhanced with light makeup to appear natural and graceful, with flattering clothing that seemed both full of effort and effortless, adorned Kate, making her look like she had just walked off the page of a magazine, rather than our shaky runway platform. Standing beside her, visibly exhausted from the last few hours spent rocking on a turbulent flight, it was hard to imagine how she still seemed impossibly put together and still smiling. We waited our turn to purchase train tickets to take us to our hostel. After nearly 2 weeks in Europe, the Greek language seemed just as difficult and impossible to decipher. 3 hours later, after a long and deafeningly loud train ride and a claustrophobic nightmare subway trip, we emerged from underground into a circus of activity, like two moles coming out on the first morning of spring. Armed with our heavy suitcases and our almost comically vague map, we stepped out in search of our destination. One eager and optimistic, one anxious and weary. The trip so far had been deemed a success. 14 days of guiltlessly portioning in extra dessert, removed from work demands, and distracted enough to allow any wounds of the past to heal just a little bit without really noticing. It hadn't been the easiest winter. After a few scattered incidents of crying in greasy fast food restaurant seats, sleeping more than a coma patient, and, walking my way through the tattered remains of my expectations, my sister helped me to focus on an escape, thus providing the ultimate medicine. Suddenly, my gloom was replaced with the promise of new foods from Europe, strong caffeinated beverages that would put my beloved Keurig to shame, and the adventure unknown awaiting an ancient architecture. So we planned quickly, scooping up last-minute internet deals and securing our homes away from home. With some very limited laptop clicks, an entire trip had been formed. The only thing left to do was to find a pet sitter, start packing, and distract ourselves until we left. Athens was the final spot before we returned to the lives left behind. For Kate, she could be happy anywhere, and while I know she had greatly loved our times abroad, I swear at times she could almost muster a similar amount of excitement for an evening spent cleaning our apartment. I continued to grasp to our trip, gaining needed strength in these new sights. Here, in these undiscovered corners, my past mistakes had a harder time catching up with me. Without the familiar smells and the haunts of an alternative version of myself, I felt lighter than I had in months. Well, excluding the time in between locations when I had to haul my suitcase around. A victim of overpacking and a need to constantly layer clothing had really taken a toll on my cat-clawed luggage with a broken wheel. Each time we ventured into our new city, we relied on our own strength and sensibilities to get us by and to get our belongings to their temporary new dwelling. Luckily for us, though, our map reading skills generally proved to be fairly decent after being forced at a young age by our father to develop a sense of navigation. So we assumed in this final attempt that finding our hostel was going to be a real piece of cake. However, with very unclear internet directions, our bags only managed to get heavier and heavier with each clipped step. Painful red blisters formed on my hands, and my stomach howled, aching for a meal outside of airline convenience. As I started to slip into a sulk, my endlessly graceful sister glided forward. 30 minutes of excess grunting, sweating, and complaining later, I was reaching a breaking point. Kate remained optimistic that our haven was soon approaching. I learned then, in an instant, that if you take a simple moment to just catch your breath, you ultimately provide the perfect amount of time to attract the attention of a Greek gentleman. In this case, two. They spotted us from this small street kiosk where they were working. The younger of the two looked my sister up and down, and with his sparked glance and in broken English, offered a hello. My sister grinned, her big white teeth breaking out into the late hour, and she asked him if he could help us to be pointed in the right direction of our hostel. The man actively grabbed the map and the directions in an attempt to unlock their secrets. He moved like his life depended on it. "I'll take you," he smiled. "It's not too far." And with a nod to the older man, he stepped away, his longer hair catching the streetlight. Kate beamed and followed behind, finally exposing my presence. The man's face revealed a look of surprise before it darkened, like the sun being drowned in clouds before a storm. He sighed and walked closer to Kate as I continued to trudge behind, forever struggling with my things. The man began to immediately speak of Athens in a stream of warnings, which I consider to be a bold and interesting choice. I thought his flirtation could use a little finesse, though I guess since the "come here often" question had been removed from the table, maybe this was his go-to move. Maybe outside of America, the small talk is tossed away to get right down to scaring the ladies. And with that curiosity, I listened to his words. He cautioned that men here were aggressive and dangerous. All of them. Continuing to stress how treacherous the city could become at night, specifically the very street where my flip-flops were currently cracking along. The man continued with cautions regarding theft and advised us to be watchful of our belongings because it was common practice for tourists to lose things to sneaky hands. He said we should never allow a stranger to hold our belongings, even if they seemed kind, because almost always they would steal it. It was then that my silver flip-flop caught a crack in the pavement, causing me to lunge forward with a loud whack. The man smiled at my sister and turned around and asked me if I wanted him to carry my bag. I answered him with a questioning stare. Now, I hadn't really found this guy to be particularly kind, but he was certainly a stranger to me. Was this a joke? Considering his flirtation technique, maybe this was him showcasing a silly side. Was he trying to teach me a lesson? Why would he stumble through his English to speak only of men taking bags and then immediately offer his service? Not wanting to actually know that answer, I shook my head and pleaded with each and every Greek god to grant me strength, and avoided looking down at my throbbing foot and now broken toenail. Since I'm pretty sure those Greek gods had nothing better to do but listen to my cries, I thank them for allowing us to arrive safely to our final destination. I wiped the bangs that were now plastered to my forehead to the side and offered a thank you to our helper. Shockingly, he ignored me and put his attention onto Kate. "If you want to reach me, you can come back to my store. I'll give you a tour of this city," he said hopefully. I'm almost positive you could hear the sound of my eyes rolling. I felt very much like a wicked stepsister keeping the beautiful princess hostage under his presence. "Okay, thank you," Kate waved and stepped inside of our hostel entrance. I peeked behind to watch him disappear back into the darkness. She turned her attention to my shoe. It had been split open, the sole ripped in two. For a moment, Kate's face seemed darker than I had seen it, but within a blink, she exclaimed something about always wanting to go shopping for authentic gladiator sandals and took the backpack from my hold. I welcomed the weight releasing from my shoulders and accepted the demise of a pair of sandals and closed the door, promising my stomach that our late dinner was only a shoe change away.